Hey you guys, this is Josh
And Carolyn.
with Homesteading Family, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pantry Chat Food for Thought.
This week we're talking about the epic battle. The
Yep.
battle to the death between garden and grass.
Ooh.
And what we're doing to try and solve our grass issues and do what Josh and I, we always try and do this, which I think is going to benefit us, and it is benefiting us in the long run, is that we try to improve our systems every year so that homesteading gets easier for us year after year. And this year we're tackling this problem of grass invading our garden beds in the terrace gardens and the cottage gardens. So we're going to be talking about what we're doing to try and stop the invasion.
Which is a question we get often. It's a challenge many of you face, and it's a challenge that's not really ever going to go away. We all like grass, for one, so we have it. And then there's places where we don't like grass, and we have it. And it's not easy to get rid of, especially if you're going to try to do it organically, chemical-free. Even then, it's not necessarily easy to get rid of. But we've got some strategies that we're employing that we know work. And so we're going to talk that out in a little bit. But first, we got to cover a little chit chat and one or two of your questions.
So what have you been up to?
Wow, what am I up to? We are finishing the barn remodel, or I should say working through it. We just got the roof on. I think we're done. We've been working on this for 4 years now, on the actual structure of the barn. Roof is on it. We're done. Now, still got a lot to do with electric, water, some animal management systems under roof. So we'll still be working on that most of the summer. That's like the major project. Otherwise, trying to get the property through the heat. We have had just such an off year with super cold late in the spring, not real wet, and now kind of extreme heat for North Idaho.
Yeah.
We had a 3 days over 100, capping that with 105 up here.
That's pretty hot for us.
That is pretty hot for us, and it taps our water. Our water systems are still want to keep finding and keep improving those every year as well. But, you know, we've got a lot going on, and you hit July and August with this kind of heat coming into it, and we need water to help get through. So a lot of it's managing water and just helping the property get through that heat.
Now I gotta back up just a little bit to the barn again, because this last weekend I got to go on a flight with our son, who is a private pilot. He has his private pilot's license, and so for a late birthday present, he took me up on a flight, and I got to fly around the property. And I gotta say, we have added a lot of square footage on that barn. That is a big barn at this point, which houses a lot of animals and a lot of feed and a lot of shavings and different things that we have to be stocked up on to get through the winter with the animals. But it was a fun experience getting to fly over the property and circle it a few times. I know we've seen it with drones a few times, but it's just not quite the same as being up there and looking at it in context of all the land around it. And it is really neat.
Very cool. Yeah, it is a huge barn. And, up here in North Idaho, we're under roof for 5 to 6 months out of the year with animals. And so we've got to keep the animals. We got to give them enough space so it stays clean, the feed, the shavings, and equipment storage. So, yeah.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah.
For people who are pretty new listening to us, what kind of animals do we keep in the barn over winter?
All of them. So cows, that's beef cows and dairy cows. And we have more beef cows than we need. We're building toward being able to sell a few. So some of that is built toward selling a little bit of surplus and maybe one of the kids taking more of a commercial direction eventually. So we're moving, a little past homesteading with that. But dairy cows, beef cows, sheep, pigs, we've got, I don't know now, we just had a new litter of pigs, so now we've got, I don't know how many pigs. A lot of pigs. We have more pigs than cows, which is a funny thing for me to say.
That is funny. Not all of those will go through the winter, though, because a lot of those are
5 of those will go into the freezer this year,
yeah.
And then we have chickens, we have egg layers.
Goats,
that's right, we have goats.
Can't
we have
forget
more
about the
goats than we've ever had before as well. We have a lot of babies in the barn right now.
Yeah.
and chickens, and the geese come and hang out as well.
Yeah, they kind of come and go as they please.
Yeah.
Come winter
Yeah.
time, but
It's also where we process our chickens, so we have set up for that. It's also where we process, some of our meat when we're butchering ourselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
lots goes on in the barn.
Lots goes on there. It's like a second house. I think it's bigger than our house now.
It might be
It's pretty
bigger
big.
than the house.
Yeah.
It's big.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep. What about you?
Ooh, well, with the heat comes lots of things ripening quickly. And some of those things we're not so excited about. We had a lot of plants bolt and go right to seed.
Yeah.
We had a really cool, long spring or early summer, and then it just overnight kind of went to extremely hot. We didn't get kind of a nice mellow period like we normally get in between. And so we had a lot of things like the Napa cabbages, some of the mustards, some of the early spring greens that they went right from oh, look, they're ready to harvest to completely bolted.
Yeah.
And, but then we have other things that we're excited about. The strawberries, oh, they've been so good this year with that heat.
Yeah, the heat, and we composted them and we mulched them better this year, I think. And I mean, it's a good variety of strawberries that we got from a neighbor that she'd been raising here for, I don't know, decades and decades. I think her whole life.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, and but they really stood out this year.
They were so good.
Wow. We had one of the kids' cousins was here, lives in Texas, and she's like, you could sell these for $5 a piece.
She did. She was really impressed by the taste of the strawberries because they were so good. The raspberries are now on. The peas, they're kind of with the mustards. They're
They did not like
happy,
it.
happy. What is this weather?
Right.
We're not happy anymore.
Ouch.
So we're harvesting a little bit of those, but we're not going to get much.
No.
We're not going to get very many peas this year. But I see the green beans are coming on. So we're just keeping up with the new flush of harvest. We're getting out all the things that are just done from spring and putting in some new babies all over the garden. This morning we've got another batch of lettuce, cilantro. We're getting a bed ready for some more green onions. So we're just kind of got lots of things going in and coming out. We've got baby broccolis and cauliflowers seeded in the house for transplanting out after the intense insect pressure leaves. Flea beetles for us. We'll be able to get those out. So it's just kind of keeping up with that sort of thing. Lots of harvesting herbs right now, also bringing in a lot of culinary and medicinal herbs into the house and processing those.
And for those of you that maybe haven't followed on for a long time, what Carolyn's describing is actually succession planting, and with a lot of the leafy greens and a lot of these vegetables, and it's what keeps us in fresh eating all through the season while still growing some of our other main crop that keeps us in our own homegrown vegetables all through the winter.
Right.
It takes both of those strategies.
Yeah, so definitely for things like the lettuces, every week we're planting a new 5-foot bed of lettuce, and we're harvesting about 5 feet of lettuce every week now too. So we just
That's a 30-inch row, right?
Keep doing it. Yep.
30-inch row, 5 feet long. For us, most people you
don't need that much.
You need probably a foot or two, maybe.
We're feeding about 15 people a meal.
Yeah.
Around here on average. So between
It's a big salad
children
every day.
and interns and guests and us,
Yep.
it's a big salad every day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good.
So
All
that's
right.
main things that's going on. Hey, before I go any further, I've got to tell you guys something else that I'm doing right now. Oh, I can't believe I forgot to mention it because I'm spending a bit of time. You can't see it, but it's right over there if you're watching on video.
You've
with
seen it
my
before.
freeze dryers because I'm filming the brand new freeze drying masterclass. I am so excited about this. This class is taking you through every part of freeze drying, how to set up your machine, how to maintain your machine, and how to freeze dry things like fruit and vegetables and meats and dairy and eggs and meals, whole meals, and how to rehydrate them all. I'm really excited. And I have been spending quite a bit of time filming and getting ready to film more pieces. And so I'm doing a whole section on filming freeze drying fruit coming up here in the next couple days. So it's really exciting.
Well, and if you've taken any of Carolyn's master classes, these are full classes that take you kind of from 0 to 60 miles an hour, whatever pace you want to take to get there.
Right.
But it can take you from no knowledge to mastery. They're truly master classes, so this will be good. How is this, just because people are going to be asking out here, because there's a lot of people aware that you have a book coming out as well on freeze
Yes.
drying. How are these going to, are they going to dovetail, or how is this
Yeah.
all coming together?
They're really going to go together really nicely. A lot of us are visual learners, and we really need to see that process done all the way through. And so in this class, I'm literally taking you through every step of about 20 different foods where I am going to be freeze drying it, doing all the preparation steps, all the pre-treatment steps, the freeze drying, the testing to see if it's freeze dried, and then the rehydration steps on camera with you guys so that you don't miss a step. What that'll do is it'll totally build that skill in to be able to go and freeze dry all sorts of other things. And then you'll be able to use all the great information in the book. It's all in the book too. It's just for those of you guys who want the step by step and to really be able to see the process, the class is really going to dive into detail in seeing what's happening. Plus, there's a whole lot of additional recipes in the class that are definitely not in the book. So that's
Yeah.
kind of fun. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up.
So
there.
is there a place people can sign up or
Yes.
find out about
So-
the class so they know, they kind of get on the know, the inside?
Yeah, so those of you guys who have followed us for a while know that when we release a brand new class, we always give people who have been following us the first chance to get a best price that it will ever be offered. It's over 50% off the actual price. And we only give that for a couple days just for you guys. So if you're interested in that, you're going to want to go down to the link I have for you in the show notes and sign up for the wait list. In the wait list,
You got to be on the wait
you
list
have
to
be on
get
the
that
wait list.
notification. So
But there's really
get
cool
on
other
there.
things. I'm giving away special training in the wait list, and we're actually giving away a freeze dryer. But you have to be
You
on the
better
wait
go
list.
get on the wait list.
You
I mean,
have to be on the wait list.
That right there.
So just follow the link below, get onto that wait list. You'll start hearing about the class, and you will be definitely clued in to when the class is coming out, when we're giving away the freeze dryer, all of that sort of stuff. So
Very cool.
very
That'll be
exciting.
fun.
Okay.
All right, we better
before we
move.
move into the question of the day, we have to do a sponsor spot real fast because this podcast is brought to you by a favorite supplier of ours, which is Lehmans. Lehmans is a company that we have purchased from for probably
18 years?
16, 17,
Yeah, I don't
18
know.
years,
Somewhere in
something
there.
like that. If you are looking for off-grid options to life, there are a lot of really cool things that Lehmans has for off-grid living, which is really great whether you're just looking for preparedness or simplifying, your life, going back to a little bit of a simpler method to doing things, or if you just want to reduce your electrical bill, this can be a great way to go. So they have things from off-grid lighting to off-grid garden solutions to cleaning solutions, all sorts of amazing things.
Well, and if you want backups, maybe you're not looking to go off grid. I mean, look, you want to make butter with an electric butter churn. You want to make bread with an electric bread maker to make this life doable day to day in the modern world. But we also need redundancies. We also need off-grid systems.
Yeah.
And those are just easy ones to bring up. But you want a non-electric butter churn. You don't really need much for bread. You can need that by hand. But you want those systems that, do help you back up when the power is down.
Yeah. Heating, lighting,
Yeah.
all of that
Yep.
sort of thing. So check out Lehmans. We'll have a link for you below.
And you also get a 15% off your order.
Ooh.
Use the code 1FH5CT. That will be in the notes as well.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Question of the day.
Question of the
Let
day.
me ask you this one.
Okay.
Ice Cream Carla on the These Toxins Are Making You Sick video.
Carla, do you like ice cream?
Is there a water filter brand that you recommend?
What we have used over the years and have really liked when we've needed one is the Berkey filter. Berkeys are used all over the world by Red Cross, emergency situations, and some of the really bad places. It's a great, simple solution. That's what we've done when we've been in places usually for us it's been because we've been in the city and the water has been chlorinated and fluoridated, and we didn't want that. And you can take care of both of those with the Berkey, though the fluoridation filters are an extra. But it also takes care of most of your biological I don't know everything, but it's extensive. I mean, they use it all over the world in disaster areas and very poor areas to filter water. So that's our go-to. They're not cheap, but compared to a built-in home system of some sort, they're pretty cheap, and they work well for your drinking water. So that would be my go-to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think they even filter out viruses, which is some of the smallest things
Yeah.
that you can get in your water that you need to get rid of. So
Yeah.
that's really
That
valuable.
would be our recommendation.
All right. Hey, and you can get Berkeys on Lehmans.com.
Hey, very cool.
There we
All right.
go. Okay, so today we're talking about
Grass.
grass.
Grass
Ooh.
gets in the way,
We
doesn't it?
love it and we hate it, don't we?
We do. We like our nice, short, manicured lawns,
And we like our healthy pasture.
and we like our healthy pasture, but they don't mix well with our vegetable gardens or our cottage gardens.
Yes, definitely. And so this is a problem. I think in the last few years, well, those of you guys who have been following us, if you watched any of our videos on YouTube and seen any of our garden tours, you'll know that we have an area out front, right out front, our right out of our kitchen door, that we call the cottage garden. Kind of runs along the front of our house. And originally, when we moved here, that was
grass.
all lawn. That's all it was. There was no garden there. It was just lawn. And then immediately off of that, there's a slope down the front of the house that goes down to the lower pasture. And that was all grass when we started, but then we terraced it so that we could start growing on it. And so we left the flat parts of the terraces for growing, as you do, and the what would you call that, sloped parts of the terraces, those stayed in grass.
We tried to seed them in clover. We cut them back, and we did seed them in clover, and the grass came back.
The grass won.
So, when we converted the lawn, right, we did the whole sheet mulching, layered garden thing, take the grass down, cardboard, paper, compost, mulch. Worked great. Worked fine.
Amazing.
Removed 90% of the grass. Well, removed all of the grass at first, but the problem is there was still grass all around the edges. And that grass, if it spreads like most grasses do by its roots, by the rhizomes moving across, tends to creep back in.
Well, we also made a mistake, I did, in that in designing the cottage garden, we have this great path that runs through it, and I thought, oh, it would be lovely if it was a grass path, right? Well, that's a little bit of oversight. I should know better than that, because what happened was that the grass from the grass path and all the edges where we had not turned it into garden bed started to creep into the garden beds. And so every single spring I would be out there pulling out grass roots and getting more and more frustrated. And kind of the same thing was happening down in the terrace beds, where
Even worse in terrace beds.
even worse in the terrace beds, because it was all grass with these like 30-inch rows of garden stuck in the middle of essentially a grass patch. And so the grass would grow. If we didn't weed whack it fast enough, the grass would actually get tall and fall down onto my crop. So then you couldn't come and weed whack it without manually pulling all the grass backwards. So it just, I think I stormed in the house at least 2 summers in a row and said, I quit gardening on the terrace gardening because I can't do this. I was so frustrated with the grass.
There were a few elevated conversations because this became a huge maintenance issue. She's managing the terrace gardens. They're the kitchen garden, basically, right off the cottage garden. And but I kind of manage the property, and which comes to some of the maintenance and keeping grass trimmed, and so the grass isn't always getting trimmed fast enough because it was a huge maintenance project, and then it's getting in the way, creeping into the gardens, and we're going round and round with this, and this really got to be the height for us of I mean, there's other little areas on the property, but this got to be the height of like, okay, this is a real problem here. This might be leading toward marital counseling or something.
So what you're saying is we're getting rid of the grass to solve our marriage problems,
right?
Not because of the grass. It's helping. Let's just say it works. Sometimes you go this way.
Right.
So let's talk about our solutions, though, or do you have more thoughts?
Well, I think people relate. You
Yeah.
know, the grass is a pain. It gets in the way, and you
Yeah.
fight it, and you hear some of the ideas and do they really work, and you try them, and then they don't really work sometimes. And we hear this from you guys, different people we talk to. And so there are some ways that work, and it's just doing them right, and it's doing them really right to begin with, and then somewhat consistently. So let's start by talking about just natural ways to get rid of the grass, or ways to get rid of the grass.
Can I go backwards just a little bit, because there are different types of grass, and we do want to touch on this really quickly. And you're going to have different types where you are. There are grasses that pretty much stay still when you put them there. Right?
Not all grass is spread by root. Right?
Yeah, and some spread by root and by seed. So, you kind of have different things going on. So what we're really talking about here are grasses that are spreading by rhizome, is what we're really working on fixing on our property.
The majority of that, though, there are grasses that spread by seed, and so if you have those near areas, then you need to deal with that too, which is just cutting it before it seeds. That part is simple. It's the grasses that spread by root that cause all of us problems.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
So, one of the ways that you guys will hear is just kind of the mulch method. And you want to convert a lawn to grass, or you want to get all the grass out of your orchard, because grass isn't really the best thing for fruit trees either, a heavy thatch of grass. You'll hear about mulching. Mulching does work, but you have to do it right. And like we did in the cottage garden, that worked had we done other strategies with it and not allowed a grass pathway, it would have worked just fine. But that is to put down, like many of you have seen, the cardboard or the construction paper over your sod, over your grass. You can just put it right over it. It's better if you whack that grass, cut it down as close to the dirt as possible first. A tip: the construction paper works a lot better than the cardboard.
That's surprising. That kind of feels counterintuitive, because the cardboard's thicker.
The cardboard's thicker, but there's a couple things that happens with the cardboard. Because it's thicker, it leaves more air pockets. It doesn't, if your ground isn't perfectly flat, it leaves air spaces in there, and it doesn't smother the grass the same way. You then combine that with, you have a lot more edge. You have smaller pieces with a lot more edge. Now, most of regenerative permaculture gardening, we like edge. But here we don't like edge so much, because
life happens at edge, and we're trying to kill life.
At edge, and so if the cardboard doesn't overlap enough and it's not flat enough, then that root spreading grass will find its way through. This is where the rolled construction paper works really, really well. They're long sheets. They're actually easy to apply because you roll them out. You leave a nice, 6 to 8 inch overlap. And that paper also conforms to the ground better once you get some material on it, and takes out some of those air gaps and those spaces that allows the grass a little more room and time to try to push through and find the weaknesses.
So I'll have a blonde moment here for everybody else's benefit. When you first told me that we're going to lay construction paper down, my teacher mom mind pictured little stacks of brightly colored 8.5 by 11 sheets of construction paper, because that's what we call construction paper.
Right.
And so you actually went and got a roll. Where do you go get this type of construction paper?
At a hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot if you must, Ace Hardware, wherever. They come in 3-foot rolls.
Yeah.
And there is a waxed and non-waxed. The waxed works a little better.
Slows it down even more?
Well, the non-waxed, because it's thin, it breaks apart a little faster.
Okay.
I had no problem with the wax, and people have asked. Lots of people use it. When I filmed the class, the STS class with Paul Gauchi, that's what he's gone to, over the cardboard, because it's just easier. But that thicker, slightly waxed paper does the job of holding together so that it smothers everything before, because it's going to break down, right? Like you said, the construction paper seemed not intuitive to you because it's thin. This paper holds up long enough to do the job. And it comes in 3-foot by 100, 300 foot. I don't remember exactly how long it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And you should be able to get that at anywhere that's supplying contractors material.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
So you do that, just like you've read. If you're building a garden space, then you want to compost it. And up to 6 inches of compost. That's a lot, usually expensive. Not any less than 2 if you can help it. And then mulch. And depending on what you're doing, you want a lot of mulch. You know, at least 4 inches with that sheet method. All right. Now, let's talk about just mulch without anything else, because that's another thing that you can do, but people don't do this well.
This one we have very personal experience with up in the asparagus bed, where we had grass just coming in. Even though when we moved here, I dug the entire asparagus bed out, took out all the crowns, and pulled out every single grass root. I just know I did, because there was nothing left in there, and then put it all back. And within about a year, it was
and you mulched
completely
it.
covered
We
in
got it
grass again.
mulched, few inches of mulch.
But the key that we were missing on this to make it work
Was deep mulch, and this is again something I learned from Paul Gauci. And you need.
Paul Gauci does the Back to Eden garden.
If you've ever seen the film, I just kind of assume everybody in the world's seen the Back to Eden film. If you haven't,
They
go
might
check
not
it
know
out.
his name.
It's a good film on this style of gardening, you know. Anyways, what I learned was that the mulch, one, it needs to be heavier. We use a lot of wood shavings. The wood shavings are a little too light and airy for when it comes. They're great for mulching most things, but if you're trying to suppress grass, particularly, and in this case, it's the asparagus bed, we're not like we're starting a garden over sod and smothering it with the sheets. We need to not put the sheet down, but we need a lot of mulch.
Yeah.
You need at least 8 inches of mulch.
So we deep mulched our asparagus patch this spring.
She was worried about the
And I
asparagus
was like,
coming
we
back.
just killed all of our asparagus. I know we did. And I'll tell you what, that asparagus just pops right up through it.
This is one of the best years,
It's
asparagus
been one
years.
of the best years, and the only place that we got a little bit of grass up was like
Edges.
right with the asparagus, as
Oh,
it
a
would
little
poke
bit of
out.
that,
Like
yeah.
a little bit would come up with that. Not very much. It was really easy to hand pull, and then some of the edges.
A little bit of the edges, which we'll talk about edge in a minute, because this is a key part of the strategy.
great.
Yeah. So those are 2 ways when you're trying to convert an area that's in grass. So we're starting from scratch, not battling the edges and some of the things we do afterwards. But you got to do that right. You've got to sheet mulch that correctly. You've got to do it well, and then you have to, depending on what style of gardening you're doing, or if you're not using the sheet mulching, you've got to put it on thick, at least 8 inches thicker. Like if you want to go in an orchard, you can do it even thicker if it's going into your trees. You just pull it back a little bit from the tree trunks, and that's going to help control the large area of grass. It's got to be thick enough to smother it, though.
Good.
So, but you can't necessarily do that in every place, right? And so then you get into, okay, so you get the grass under control, you knock it back, but like we said in Carolyn's cottage garden, we got about 90%. Part of the problem was we allowed the pathway, the grass pathway, which we just redid this year and turned it into stone.
Yay. We now have flagstone throughout the path in the garden, which is great. We're going to be putting some nice little thymes in between, thyme as in creeping thyme,
Creeping ground
and
cover.
elven thyme, and maybe some low-growing chamomiles, Roman chamomile in the cracks between the flagstones out there. But along with that, we put edging in.
Right. Let's go with the edging. I'm realizing I skipped a step I want to talk about. We can come back around it as we come back to the terraces.
Okay,
so this is one of the other key strategies is edging. This is something we didn't think about when we got started with this cottage garden. We did it naturally up in the main garden by edging with landscape cloth 3 foot wide in the main crop for a pathway to suppress the grass, and actually gave us a buffer from the garden to the grass that was outside the garden. That 3 foot pathway was enough to suppress 99% of the grass. We get some coming up here and there. But because a lot of these grasses, you know, they move horizontally underground, you've got to put an edge in if you've got grass near your edges. You've got to put something in the ground that makes a break so that those roots don't go across. Most of the grasses don't go super deep. You have to understand, you know, what your grasses are. Most of them don't go very deep. So like in the cottage garden, we're putting in little metal edging, pounds into the ground, and goes down in the ground 6 inches or better. And that's going to create a barrier. Landscaping ties, railroad ties, cedar, anything you can get down into the ground. I've seen people take old corrugated metal, and cut it into strips like this and use that for edging.
Oh, yeah.
You just want to be careful about the edges and
Yeah, you don't want them sharp.
sharp, so you got to think about how to finish that or where you're using it. But you need to put a break in the grass, and that's the thing we've struggled with here, where we've done a good job getting it out of an area, but then it creeps back in. And even the heavy mulch, if you have an edge there, it'll creep back in and find its way through. So you've got to edge it, right?
You
So
have
this
to
is
edge
what
it.
we've done a whole lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've put the edging now in through the cottage garden and around it. So all of the places
Completely
where it wants to
surrounded.
come in, it is now totally surrounded. Most of the grass is out, but in the areas that we just, as we were adding the edging, some places had grass on the inside of it. So it'll especially be next spring. We'll do really heavy weeding. Right now there's a lot of plants and they're very big and mature in the cottage garden at this time of year. And so it's a little hard to do like intensive weeding all the way around it. But next spring we'll go through and be very serious about getting all those grass roots out when we do our early spring weeding. And then we will be able to mulch on top of that and give it a really good mulch layer so that just the perennials are coming back every year.
Yeah.
Just the perennial plants that we want, and hopefully that'll suppress the grass to a level that we don't have this huge mountain of maintenance every single year.
Yeah, no, you'll get there, and especially as this edging's done and that mulch in there like you're talking about, get that in the cottage garden.
Right.
Nice and thick, because the perennials can handle that just fine.
Yay!
Now, there are still some areas that are difficult, and our terrace gardens are one of those areas that are difficult. It's got a steep slope on it, right? It's not going to hold mulch very well.
Right.
Just the way it's laid out and the edges, and we can do some of the edging in it eventually, but it's also a huge area to do. It's
also
long,
very rocky in some places.
and so it's hard to get edging in.
Very hard to put anything in.
And so we are going back, like, how do we just get rid of the grass and get back to ground zero on this, where we've got this slope that's over 45 degrees. It's not going to hold material very well. So the other thing that you can do is to smother it and kind of smother, cook it out. So you can cover the ground in a landscape cloth, silage tarp, something that you can lay down on the ground. Again, you want to get it as close to the ground as possible. Cut the grass down, set it back as hard as you can. We weed whack the grass on these slopes, right to the dirt, and just really harm them, right? You're taking that solar ability to gain solar energy out of it, and then you cover it up. It's nice if you can do it with something black, and so what that does is it starts to smother it, but then it also cooks it out. This is a little bit extreme. It's going to be a little hard on the soil because we're going to have to leave it there for a couple years. You could probably do it in a season. We'll see. I'll check on it next year after this summer. But you've got roots in the ground, and so we want to just, this is like the, I don't know, almost organic way to nuke it. We don't want to put chemicals on it, but we really want to get back to zero so that we can replant something there and get rid of the grass. So we're basically going to smother and cook it out. But people do this, market gardeners will do this on their rows for a short period of time, so say several weeks, just to get the weeds sprouted and bake them out. It's just a little harder with your perennial grasses. That's going to take longer. But that's what we're doing on the terrace gardens. And I'm confident that if we do it long enough, it will kill the grass back. And we just have to do it long enough to get those roots dead. There's just no environment for that grass to survive.
Right.
And then we'll come back around, and the goal will be to have eliminated in that case and have less worry about edging, though we'll probably still want to put edging in, and then put a different crop in, because we need something on the ground to hold the soil
we want
together.
that covered.
And covered, probably something like a Dutch clover that doesn't grow very big. It's perennial, but we've got to set the grass back. So that's another way to do it, to smother it. And you can certainly do that in a garden space as well. It's hard on the soil, so it's not the preferred way.
Hey, bonus with that, because it is hard on the soil, and one of the reasons is because of the heat.
Well, yeah,
that
you're
generates.
cooking the life a bit out of that surface of that soil in order to get those roots underneath, like, done.
But the benefit is, at least in an environment like this, is it creates heat. And we have some crops that really need a little bit of extra heat. So we're actually growing a whole bunch of winter squash in that location. So
Up on
that
the
they-
beds, yeah.
up kind of at the top of the slope, and so it can hang down the slope of each of those terraces, and they will just love that heat. In fact, we're seeing them already putting lots of little babies and flowers
Yeah.
out, and
Yeah, it'll
so
be interesting to
it's
see
going to
what
be a big winter hop
Hopefully
squash
so.
harvest year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully so. So those are really your manual methods. Some people try to burn the grass, say with a torch, a flamethrower, and you'll see market gardeners do this with weeds. Again, the annual weeds, it's fine. It'll kill the little things, no problem. But if you know, like we have areas here where people burn along the road to set the grass back for the year, but that's exactly what it does. It sets it back for the year. The burning doesn't kill the roots underground. It's just a surface tension or just a surface solution, and you got to take a bigger measure than that.
Yeah.
That's the other one that I see people try that just doesn't work for grasses.
Yeah.
Works fine for annual weeds.
So, you guys, whatever your problem is, whether it's grass or something else, I really encourage you when you're encountering these moments where it's like tension and it's like you're having to push through the problems and you're like, I don't like this. This is so frustrating. Let that be your sign that you need to upgrade your system somehow and figure out how to improve it so that it's less work in the upcoming years.
Well, and that's something you said earlier, maybe think about that. A lot of people ask us and want to talk about like planning for retirement, like homesteading and retirement. This is the key. This is going to be the key, is thinking now about systems and developing systems over time. It's hard to do all at once, but developing systems that make it easier, that take out the fight,
Yeah.
right? We're always going to fight the thorns and thistles to some degree, but there are a lot of things we can do with smart planning and systems that help reduce that and make things easier for us, especially as we age. Just got to be smart about it.
Got to be smart about it.
Yeah.
Here's to working smarter, not harder. How's that?
Sure. Sounds good.
All right, you guys, it's been great hanging out with you. I hope you win your grass battles.
Go get that grass under control. We will see you next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.